Interesting. Hello, hello, all, and welcome to another episode of Coffee and Code Platoon. I am your host, Greg Drobny. With me, as always, Kayla Elkin, doing the heavy lifting. And welcome to what is a very informal, casual opportunity to ask any question you have about Code Platoon, what we do here, and have it more be in a conversational type framework. So I'm going to open it up right now. Like I said, there's no real rules on what you can ask or anything like that. If you want to ask in the chat, feel free to do so. If you want to raise your hand and ask on camera or stay off camera, I don't really care. I'm open. So hit me with your questions. What's on people's minds about Code Platoon?
So while we're in the first couple minutes, I think we should start with a question that we got in advance, which is, how can I ensure in the last week before the application deadline that my application is ready to be accepted?
That's a good question. So there's one word. In fact, we just had a meeting that involved some of this, and the instructor who evaluates applications was on there. And I think if I could sum it up with one word, it would be effort. So demonstrating effort, that's really kind of what the application process is about with Code Platoon. But to summarize, the components of the application right now, as it stands, are your coding challenges, your video, and your essays. All three of those have to be submitted in order for the instructor to evaluate your application and be considered for Code Platoon. Now, the video and the essays sometimes trip people up. They think, what do I have to do? The big thing there is just to do them, to complete your video, complete your essays. And there's a couple reasons for that, but primary reason for that is because until you submit all of your application, until you submit your video and your essays, we don't even know that you've done your coding challenges. So the coding challenges, as many people know, are hosted on a site called CoderByte. You can complete those challenges, finish them, get 100% on them, and we will have no knowledge that those challenges are even in existence until you submit everything. That triggers an email that goes to our instructor, and then he will go and look at your coding challenges. So the completion of it is really the big step, making sure all of those pieces are done and submitted so that they can be evaluated. That's kind of the bottom line. Do we have a follow-up based on that?
So to sum it up, put in effort into the coding challenges and then complete the form on application part 2. That actually goes really well into the next question we got in chat, which is from someone who just learned about Code Platoon but can't finish the application in time. Is there any way to get an extension?
Oh boy, do we have an answer for you. We have an even better answer than an extension. The answer is QuickPass. And I'm sure that Kayla has the link probably handy. If not, I can find it. We have something called QuickPass that was designed exactly for this purpose. So those who come to us late in the game, they're not really prepared yet to finish all the application by the time of the deadline. They can't finish all the challenges. We have something called QuickPass, which is a class that is designed to get you to the same place. The goal is the same, to get you up to speed, learning the skills that you need to know. There's the link in the chat there. You can check out QuickPass. Sign up for that. I believe it starts August, am I right, 19th, 18th? Am I right on that date? I'm close.
August 19, yes.
19. I knew it was one of the two. I couldn't remember if it was 18 or 19. August 19th. So that will begin then. And again, it is designed to help prepare you for the cohort. So sign up for that. But back to the coding challenges, back to the question about, submitting it on time, or can you have an extension? Here's what I tell everyone at this stage of the game. Work on it as much as you possibly can between now and the deadline. Do as much as you can. If we get to that point where you need an extension on, let's say, Monday, when the deadline is, if you still need an extension, we'll have that conversation. But try to make as much progress between now and then as you possibly can. And the reason I say that is because we still have technically, how long do we have until, well, we've got a deadline on Monday, right, for golf.
Yes, evening and weekend golf platoon deadline is on Monday, the 29th, and then Yankee platoon deadline is not this Sunday, but next Sunday. So 9 days from today.
Right. So the point there is that we have several days and even over a week with one of the deadlines before you have to have all that in. Sometimes I get people at this stage of the game asking for an extension. There's a lot you can do in 4 or 5 days or a week. Make that effort to make as much progress as you possibly can between now and then. Then we will have that conversation about an extension. But again, back to that original point, we've got Quick Pass. We've got Quick Pass exactly for that purpose. Please sign up for Quick Pass. It's a great program. The instructors are going to work with you and help you develop the skills necessary to do well in the program.
While we're on the topic of Quick Pass, Greg, what are the requirements that Quick Pass enrollees must complete in order to enroll in Yankee Platoon or the evening and weekend golf platoon?
So the requirements, as I understand them, is that you do have to do these same coding challenges, but the instructors are helping you get to that point. So instead of you doing the work on your own to get to that point, you're going to work in a class with instructors explaining the steps to get there. So it's ultimately the same requirements. You're still going to have to complete some challenges in JavaScript or Python, and you're still going to have to take what we call a live technical assessment, which is kind of like an interview with the instructor who evaluates basically, and this, for lack of a better way of putting this, who makes sure that you didn't cheat on the coding challenges, right? So if you used something like ChatGPT to answer the coding challenges on our application, in a live technical, that's going to come out. Within like one question, when Guillermo asks a live technical question, he's going to be able to know whether or not you used ChatGPT or whether or not you did it on your own. So that's really kind of the purpose of that live technical. So coding challenges still there, live technical assessment still there.
Awesome, thank you. Another question we get frequently, what are the advantages of submitting an application early if someone's almost done?
Huge advantage. The advantage is that we have a pretty quick turnaround on our application evaluations. Applications are typically evaluated within 72 hours. And in the event that your application is not quite up to par, it's not quite good enough, the instructor who evaluates them is going to give you some feedback on what you need to do. And if you have time, and if you're still early ahead of the deadline, you can resubmit that and have it evaluated again. And typically the people who do that are accepted. We've had numerous students do that who came through Code Platoon and were very successful. They submitted an application, wasn't quite where it should be. They worked on it based on the instructor feedback and resubmitted it, accepted, did very well. So really, this is it's not a trick. We're not creating an unnecessary hoop. We want you to be prepared. We want you to have the skills you need to get through the program. And so there are no negative points. And it's not like you're looked down on if you don't get in the first time or something like that. Submit, go for it, give it a shot. You're not going to be looked down on for doing it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. Doesn't matter. Doesn't make us look bad on you at all.
Awesome. Thank you, Greg. We already talked about the coding challenges and a little bit about the application form, but can you walk us through what is on the application part 2 form and about how long it might take somebody to complete it as they're budgeting their last time in the week before the deadline?
Sure. And I think for a detailed response to that, I think actually Kayla's probably going to be a better answer than I do. But I think from a conceptual perspective, I want to put people's minds at ease. There are essay questions on part 2 of the application. These are not college level papers we're asking people to write. We're not grading harshly on spelling or even format. We're not asking for syllogistic thought even. A lot of what's on part 2 of the application is about commitment. It's about your commitment to this program and a recognition that this is a difficult program. It's an intense program, and we want people to know that going in. We don't want people to be surprised when they get into the program and say, I didn't realize that I would be spending 10 to 12-hour days learning how to write code. Well, you did understand because that's part of the essay process. So the essays, I don't know, do you have any further detailed thoughts? Because I know that there are some of those essays that are like you pointed out, Kayla, they're conditional logic based, which they're not going to open up until you answer some of the question. I know this throws a lot of people, they see part 2 of the application, I get questions and they say, I don't know where the essay questions are. Answer the first couple things and it will open up what those essay questions are. Kayla, I don't know, any follow-up thoughts on
Said
that?
the reasoning for that is the questions are slightly different based on which program you're going to join. Obviously, if we asked you how you are going to prepare for the immersive program and you're doing the evening and weekend program, that doesn't make sense. So that is why. I would just echo what Greg said. We're not looking for like a 5-paragraph essay. 1 to 2 paragraphs is sufficient. Once you've put in which program you're applying to on the form, as well as your military affiliation, that is the whole entire form. Nothing else is going to sneak up on you on that form. It's those 2 really short essays, and then there's the video submission as well.
And the video submission to point out, save one of your coding challenges that you finished, because the video submission has to do with you talking through how you solved one of your coding challenges. But here again, we're not talking about high level of critique. There's a reason why we do it, and it benefits you later on. You'll see later on in the program why this makes sense. But these are not like, we're not looking for high video production. We're not looking for any kind of super highly technical effort in terms of your video that you make, but it is part of the application process. So don't just worry about coding challenges more, because that's the skill you're learning. That's what you need to be doing. The video and the essays are really kind of a formal way of presenting yourself to the program.
Absolutely. And we say on the video submission, no more than 5 minutes, like camera, phone, or like built-in computer camera are totally fine. Doesn't have to be like a formal production or anything like that. Just be able to explain your answer and answer the question on the video submission.
I think that there is an actual example of someone a few months back submitting a video in a sandstorm in Kuwait to Guillermo from their phone, and he accepted it. So you're good.
I know
Just
we've had multiple people submit from Navy ships, like in the ship while they're filming. So yeah, nothing too crazy there.
Yeah, you don't need official podcast format.
So how soon after submitting the application can people expect to hear back?
Within 72 hours is our standard. So within 72 hours, Guillermo should be reaching out to anyone who submits a full application. I do allow for the possibility of holidays always. I don't think we have any holidays coming up right now, so that's probably not a concern. I say within 72 hours. I've often seen it much less than that. Guillermo, much to the chagrin of his girlfriend, I've learned this in person, will grade and evaluate applications at 2 in the morning on a Saturday. I don't know why, but sometimes he does. So you can expect to get notified at very odd hours. But Guillermo is on top of it. He's great, and he'll turn that around as quickly as he possibly can.
Awesome, thank you. So we've talked a lot in anticipation of the application deadlines that are coming up in the next like 3 and 9 days. But for anyone joining us who has a little bit longer, how would you recommend they prepare for the application?
The best thing to do for anybody coming to this new is to start with our Intro to Coding program, which is completely free of charge. It costs you nothing other than your time. It is a self-paced program that we have a lot of resources to help with. So Intro to Coding is an introduction to JavaScript. And the nice thing about this, like I said, is it's free, it's self-paced, but we also have a video series on our YouTube channel, and we can link that today, that is an instructor going through this same class with a class of people who are asking questions. So that means that we did a live version of Intro to Coding. And when we did it, we recorded it all and put it as a playlist on YouTube. So you don't just have a self-paced class to access, you actually have a recorded version of a live class to go through. This is the best method we have for starting to learn this skill. Again, it's a free introductory program that will help prepare you not just for the challenges, I think sometimes people mistakenly think that these challenges are kind of a hoop to jump through to get into the program. That's not necessarily the case. These are fundamental skills that you will need as a software engineer. These are the base level skills. If you think about this as learning a new language, which in many ways it is, our intro to coding is the base level of starting to have a conversation with another person in that foreign language. So if you were to go to an immersion school for Spanish, our intro to coding is teaching you how to say, hello, how are you? My name is, where's the bus? Where's the airport? Those kinds of things in that foreign language. So that's the best place to start for people who have a little bit more time. If you're coming to us late, quick pass. If you're coming to us and you've got plenty of time before a deadline, start on intro to coding as soon as possible. Question, do I need to have my VA benefits fully approved before I finish my application? Absolutely not. No, you do not need to have VA funding fixed or even any kind of funding fixed before you finish your application and we accept you. The only thing that has to be the date before which funding has to be solved is the start date of the cohort. That funding question has to be figured out before you actually start the cohort, but not at all before you submit your application or are accepted. So in many cases, in fact, this is very often the case, if you are a VR&E student, which is, we want more VR&E students. VR&E takes a little bit of time because you have to work with a counselor, and that counselor has to sign off on you attending Code Platoon so that the VA can pay for that. In that event, it does not have to be before the application is done, and most of the time it's several weeks or even a month after that. So no worries on that. Worry about the application first. However, strong caveat to that, start the process of funding. If you're working with the VA, start the process of getting approved before. So start that immediately, because some things with the VA, they do take time. I mentioned VR&E, that's a perfect example. The biggest gap of time that you will face with VR&E is getting a counselor. So you can submit your application on the VA's website. From the time that you submit that application to obtaining an actual counselor and being assigned a counselor can be several weeks or a month or more. It depends on your area, it depends on how many counselors are available. Just know that that can take some time. So start that process early, but you don't need to have it worked out to be accepted to Code Platoon.
Absolutely. And we can also help a little bit with obtaining those benefits after you're accepted as well. So that's another reason not to wait on that end.
Absolutely. And if anybody is a VR&E hopeful, they're trying to go through the VR&E process, please contact me directly, because I can give you some tips on how you can maximize that first meeting with your counselor. There's a lot of things that need to be understood about VR&E and how the process works. And a lot of veterans don't know this. The VA does not publicize how this process works. You kind of have to go to external sources to figure it out. But I've gone through this process. I understand how it works. So I'm happy to kind of counsel you on how to best use that effort. Do you have the question? Do you have an AI bootcamp? So AI as a tool is integrated and is being continually updated and integrated into our full stack software engineering program. It's not a separate program, but it is integrated into what we are currently doing. This, for the record, for anybody coming along to this concept of boot camps and is not really familiar with what they are, this is one of the advantages to boot camps. Boot camps have the ability to change their curriculum and to change it much quicker than a college would. It's one of the biggest advantages of the boot camp is that we don't have to go through a lot of red tape, but state regulatory and accreditation, all of these factors that go into colleges changing their curriculum is why boot camps really came along in the first place. We were able to adopt these new technologies as they came out and start integrating them into our curriculum as they're going. And so if someone were to go to our graduation videos, which is a great place of learning about what Code Platoon does, you will see the final projects that students make, and you will see how they integrated AI technologies, large language models into their final projects, and how we incorporate that into our curriculum as it's going. So yes, we incorporate it. We do not have a separate AI bootcamp. Whether or not that happens in the future, of course, all of these things change, but as of right now, it seems sufficient to simply add it as a tool in the toolbox of the software engineer and developer.
Absolutely. So Greg, outside of the curriculum at Code Platoon, how does Code Platoon help prepare graduates to get jobs?
Ooh, good question. And that's one of the favorite areas I have to talk about because it's easy. We have a super motivated career services team that makes my job very easy. We have a career services team that begins working with our students at the end of Code Platoon. And essentially, it's as much as they want to put into it, that's what they're going to get out of it. Our career services team is going to work at every level with the graduate, including from the base level, resume development, interview prep, coaching, networking skills, networking opportunities. They're going to be feeding you all of this and offering their assistance in that regard. But we're also working from the top down in developing relationships with companies who trust us, who want to hire military people into tech roles. And so we're constantly fostering relationship with companies who hire our graduates, who trust us as an organization, and who know if they hire a Code Platoon graduate, they know they're going to perform well. We have a number of these corporate relationships. You can see that on our, where do we have those listed? On our corporate resources page. I don't remember. I suddenly blanked on the title of the page. I should know this.
Corporate partners page, yes.
Corporate partners. We have a number of these companies listed on that page and people can go and look. But the point being is that it's a top-down and bottom-up effort. We're working with the individual at every level possible to help make sure they are prepared to go into the interview process, to have these job leads, to have this networking, but then also to have those networking opportunities provided and readily accessible. So again, so that these companies can trust us and trust that we're producing good graduates. Let's see, is that so the follow-up question, which is a great question, is that service only for immerse program, or is that also for evening and week? That's for everyone. So if you're a Code Platoon graduate, you are permanently considered part of the alumni who the career services team will help. 2 years later, if you're still looking for work or you have a job and then you want to get a new job, career services is still going to be there. They're still going to help you however they can. That is for all of our graduates. Now, what I will say is, if you're graduating the evening and weekend program and you're seeking career services assistance, you will probably be one of a smaller number of your cohort who is seeking that, because a lot of our evening and weekends graduates are already working for companies and they're looking to upskill and go into promoted roles within the company they're already working for. So in other words, there might be fewer people who are utilizing those services, but they are still absolutely accessible to you. And the career services team is absolutely motivated to work with you just the same as they would with an immersive candidate.
Absolutely. And I think in addition to career services, I really like to mention the resume coaches and the industry mentors that are available to students at Code Platoon, because I think that's a really great resource for folks to connect with people in the industry and learn more about what they do. So I just like shouting that out in addition to everything Greg said.
Great point. And I take for granted that I sometimes consider the mentors as just simply part of our career services. But in reality, like Kayla's saying, a lot of the mentors who volunteer at Code Platoon are people who are working for other companies. They're working in the industry and they're just volunteering their time to help graduates understand the industry, understand the roles that are out there, network, all of these things. So yeah, it's just another level. It's a very comprehensive effort. And we have a lot of resources for graduates. That's not to say, and I don't want to minimize this part of it. It's not to say that that's not hard, right? It is challenging. You know, job seeking is challenging for everyone, regardless of your skill set. So don't think that it's just easy and everything's handed to you. But at the same time, we're there. We're there to help in every aspect of that endeavor. Let's see. Question that just came in the chat. Can you speak about the difference between the full stack and DevOps programs? As for the DevOps program, is it beginner friendly? Consider that I have only development background through my computer science program. I want to see if it's a good fit for me. Great question. Great question. So this is a common question. It requires a little bit of nuance. So the first level of the question is the difference between the two. These are somewhat different skills. Obviously, here's the best analogy that I've come up with. I've run this by several developers and engineers, and I think it's on solid ground. So if anybody has a problem with this, beat me up on it. Feel free to tell me I'm wrong, but here's the analogy that I came up with. Imagine a big symphony, a big orchestra, right? You've got an orchestra presenting music. The people who write that music, who created the music from the ground up, are equivalent to the software engineer. Those are the creators, the base level creators who are coming up with things from the base level. The conductor, the person who presents that music, who makes sure everything is tight and in order and perfectly working well, that's the DevOps engineer. So it's a somewhat different skill set. If you're more of the creative mindset, an engineer is probably a better route. And if you're more of the maintainer and implementer and quality, assurance type person, then DevOps is probably more your speed. That being said, there's about 1 billion caveats to that. And here's where this starts to get a little complicated. DevOps as a standalone role is somewhat new. And the reason I can say that is because Code Platoon was the first school to have a standalone DevOps program. DevOps as a subject was typically covered in software engineering bootcamps, but as a module. So for example, if you went to a 3-month-long bootcamp, they would cover a week of DevOps. But Code Platoon was the first school to come along and say, we're going to have a standalone DevOps program. What that means for the job market is that the overwhelming majority of people who do DevOps as a role started out as software engineers. They began their careers as a software engineer and then became DevOps in the process of their career development. Does that mean that you can't start out as DevOps? No, it just means that most people who do it were already software engineers. Now, it sounds like if you have a bachelor's degree in computer science already, and you have an understanding of coding to a degree, and it sounds like you might, then DevOps might be a very good fit for you if that's the direction you want to go with it. But that being said, there's another caveat to this, is that DevOps is only available evening and weekends. And one of the reasons for that is because of what I mentioned a minute ago. Most of the people who wanted to do DevOps are already working in the industry, and they couldn't do an immersive program. And I bring that up in this context because that might influence your decision-making. If you say, no, I want to do this in 15 weeks, I want to get through everything and do it in an immersive fashion, then full stack is the only option you have here at Code Platoon. But if you are already working and you're willing to do this evening and weekend, then you have both options available. Will, does that make sense? Or do you have follow-ups based on what I've said so far before I go too much further and get myself in trouble saying the wrong thing? Wrapping up my degree in the next year with 1 internship with some development experience in Python, which is great because Python is a language that we require for the DevOps application. Note here for anyone else, the full stack application you can do in JavaScript or Python. The DevOps application has to be done in Python. So be sure you're aware of that. But if you've already got some experience in Python, that's a great foundation for going into DevOps. Again, I think for someone like you you're going to be finishing up a degree in computer science. For someone in that position, I think it's going to come down to more for you, what end of the industry do you want to go into? What do you see yourself as? Again, in that analogy, are you the conductor? Are you the quality assurance person who's presenting it to the public? Or are you the creator? Do you like the more creative aspects of this? That should be a big driver of your decision-making process. Cloud engineering and DevOps is my 5-year plan. That's great. That's fantastic. Yeah, and if that's your goal, that's cool. But how you get there, how you get to that 5-year plan, we've had alumni. In fact, Michael who is the head of our alumni association. He was a full stack graduate. He's now a DevOps engineer. In That's what he does for a living. So can you still get into DevOps from the full stack side? It's proven that you can. How common is it now? I would have to ask some people more knowledgeable than myself. I'm not going to speculate on things that are way beyond my understanding, but that's kind of my base level approach to this. Will, by the way, like on this question, if you're coming down to like a real difficult decision, like you just can't quite decide, let me know, email me, and I'll put you in touch with people of more technical mindset who can maybe answer this a little more thoroughly. I can certainly give you the 30,000 foot view like I did a moment ago, but if you want, if it sounds like you have enough knowledge that your understanding may be very well beyond mine to the point where I can offer you a more robust solution. So if you're having trouble making that decision, email me and let me know, and I'll put you in touch with people who can help, if that makes sense. For full stack, I started the challenge. I have only seen the JavaScript option though. Is there a different link for Python challenges? No, it's the same series of challenges. As I understand it, you can solve them in either. You can use either language to solve the challenges. In fact, I had a student ask me once if they could do some of the questions in JavaScript and some of them in Python, which was impressive just from a yeah, I was impressed that they even wanted to try that, but you can actually answer question 1 in JavaScript and question 2 in Python if you really wanted to. So it's the same series of challenges. They're no different. It's just which language you choose to use to answer those challenges. Will followed up. Your answer is great. I think it might come down to timing. And that's why I wanted to bring up the evening and weekend only option. That does impact your, timing absolutely is a factor. And so be aware of the fact that you can only do DevOps through evening and weekend option. If you want to get through this now, if you want to do the immersive option, it's got to be full stack. But on that note too, you said that you are in the midst of doing a bachelor's degree. Don't plan on doing the same at the same time. Don't plan on having classes in your computer science degree program and going through Code Platoon. Code Platoon is intense. You're going to be spending 10 to 12-hour days, 5 days a week on software engineering immersion. So the reason I bring this up is because when you get accepted to Code Platoon, one of the first things that you'll have is a welcome call where the executive director will tell you exactly what I just said. So it's one of the first things he'll say is, are you willing to give up your life for the next 15 weeks? So just be prepared for that. And as long as you're on board with that, just be aware. Don't plan on doing both at the same time. It'd be let's put it this way. I haven't yet met the person who could do that. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I haven't met that person yet.
That's a great answer, Greg. We've alluded several times now to the evening and weekend program versus the immersive program, as well as DevOps only being offered in the evening and weekend model. Can we take a step back and just kind of walk through what the differences in those timings look like?
Yes. So as mentioned, the immersion program is 15 weeks long, and those are all day, every day. Well, not class on the weekends, but you might be doing work on the weekend. That's kind of dependent on the individual. But we're talking starting class at 8:30 a.m. All times I give, by the way, are Central Time, Chicago time. So if I'm saying a time, assume that that's Chicago time. 8:30 a.m. typical class start time. Spend about an hour to an hour and a half introducing a new topic and reviewing the topic from the day before. And after that, you're launching into practical applications of whatever it is you're learning. That's not 10 to 12 hours a day of lectures. We're implementing what we're doing. Very practical, hands-on application, pair programming, website building, app building, all of these things, puzzle solving, all of these things are all day, every day. Conversely, the evening and weekend model is as it sounds, and it's designed for people who just can't give up their job. It's still an intense program. Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursday evenings from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. and Saturdays from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. for 28 weeks. So just over, I think that works out to about 6.5 or 7 months. 28 weeks of those evening and weekends. You're covering the same curriculum. It's the same class, but extended out over that 28 weeks. Now, for anyone who asks or comes along and wonders, they think, man, that's a lot of hours. Cause it is, it's admittedly, you know, you're talking 3 4-hour evenings per week and an 8-hour day every Saturday. There's a reason why we do that. And it has everything to do with VA benefits. According to the VA, this classifies this as a full-time program. Now, back when we had vet tech, this was a big deal. It's a little bit less of a deal when it comes to VR&E, but it still does impact how they fund and how they pay for things like a living stipend. So we're trying to max it, because originally when I came on board with Code Platoon, that was 35 weeks. I think that was even before Kayla's time. And we changed that just so that we could reflect the VA's desire to have this was considered full-time hours, because they judge weekly class hours. They don't just judge how long something is. At any rate, that's a long explanation of the fact that, yes, it's intense, but it is manageable from the perspective of someone who's still working full-time. So if you can swing those hours, you don't want to give up your job, definitely look into the evening and weekend program.
Absolutely. And the evening and weekend program is only done remotely, while the immersive program can be done either remotely or in person in our Chicago classroom.
Good point. Thank you for reminding me. I often forget that. We do have a great classroom, by the way, for anybody who can come to Chicago. It's fantastic. It's in a WeWork facility in yeah, it's a great classroom. I think we have room for what, 28 students, like monitors all over the place that you can plug into. It's fantastic. But as Kayla said, the immersive full stack program is the only one that has the option for that in-person attendance.
Absolutely. And the immersive in-person program is the only one that can accept GI Bill at this time. Is that correct, Greg?
That is correct also, and that has to do with the way the GI Bill works. It looks like, Will is asking that question right now. So let's look at this and we'll answer that fully. From my understanding, if I want to use my GI Bill, it would be in person. How much of the GI Bill will the program take up? I'd like to know, considering I want to have time left on my GI Bill for a master's degree in the future. Okay, so as Kayla said, the only way you can use your GI Bill is in the immersive in-person option. And this has to do with the way GI Bill funding works at the state level with schools like ours. So you do have to attend in person if you even want to use the GI Bill. If not, the only other option from the VA is VR&E. So VR&E is a great option. I can talk more about that in a minute. We'll cover this first. If you decide to come in person, and if you're going to use the GI Bill, expect that it's going to take a solid, I think right now it works out to about 8 months of GI Bill time. And that goes back to what I said a minute ago. The VA calculates weekly class hours. They don't calculate semesters like you think they would. So if you're attending a college and going to 15 credit course, for 4 months at a semester, they take 4 months of time. That's not really what they're calculating. They're calculating weekly class hours. So in our case, we're having 10 to 12-hour days, 5 days a week. That ends up equating to a lot of GI Bill time. So again, I'm estimating based on the last thing that I heard from Tish, I think it's around 8 months of GI Bill time that you will use for the 15-week program. I know that's a big hit on GI Bill, so be aware of that. It's not ideal, but if it's if it's the option that you've got, that's fine. Now, a quick addendum to that, if you don't want to use that much GI Bill, and if you say, no way, I'm not using that much GI Bill, we have scholarships. We have numerous scholarships. Our scholarships range between 80 and 100% of the tuition covered based on what you qualify for. And we make scholarship applications extremely easy. Very easy to apply for our scholarships once you're accepted. And you can look at that as an option as well. Bottom line is that Code Platoon does not want tuition to be a barrier to attendance. We want to do everything we can to make sure that tuition is not a barrier. Now, while the big difference there with the GI Bill and VA funding is that we're not going to have the living stipend, we can deal with the tuition. So please don't let that be a barrier. If you say, I'm not going to use the GI Bill, we have other options. There's numerous other options. Look into VR&E, but also, because I understand wanting to have some GI Bill left over if you can, but that may I am currently on VRNE for my bachelor's. It's okay, fantastic. You already know that it's a great program. That's fantastic. Then I guess it will depend a lot on how much GI Bill you have and what master's program you're looking at. My personal recommendation, and this might require a one-on-one conversation, but I'll put this as a thought in your mind to consider as someone who's done a lot of education and spent a lot of time in different areas. I would recommend finish a Code Platoon boot camp, finish your bachelor's degree, get a career, get a job, start working at that job, and it's very possible that the company you're working for is going to give you tuition assistance. It's very possible, and especially if you're working on something that relates to your job. So if you're working as a software engineer and you say, hey, I want to get a master's in computer science, it's entirely possible that they will give you tuition assistance, and that won't be a factor. And you can do that while you're making, median salary right now for our graduates is $82,000 a year. That to me is a more attractive option than just going through school nonstop straight. Something to consider. I'm here to, just offer advice. And again, we can have that conversation one-on-one, but that's something to consider moving forward too.
Absolutely. We have quite a few alumni who went to Code Platoon either with a bachelor's degree or even no college degrees. They got a job and then they went back to school along with their employer once they had been working for a year or two. So that is definitely an option to think about.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
We've covered a lot of ground. Any other questions? Otherwise, we might let you go early.
Yeah, any questions at all? Anything. I'll answer anything I can. Can I get both of your contact info? Yes, absolutely. Mine's super. Actually, everyone at Code Platoon is pretty easy. It's all of our first names at codeplatoon.org. So please email me directly. And if we want to set up a phone call to talk more one-on-one, I'm happy to do exactly that. Because that's what I do. Here is a resource for you to kind of help guide your path, whatever that is. I'm in the business of helping veterans figure out what they're doing and figuring out if this is the right path for them. So I'm happy to talk about any number of things.
Absolutely. I appreciate you asking for both of our contact info, but you're going to want to talk to Greg. Greg is a lot more knowledgeable and experienced in these areas than me. So follow up with Greg at codeplatoon.org.
I don't know. Maybe they have questions about the back end of how the website works, Kayla, and then I can't help them. I don't know.
I mean, I can tell you about the in-person classroom and the nitro cold brew on top, I suppose.
It's true. Kayla also has more experience sitting in the classroom than I do because I'm not even in Chicago. So I'm in Colorado. I can only tell you theoretically about the class. No, that's not true. I
Visited
visit
like
it once a
twice,
year.
so that's
I
not.
visit it once a year.
All right. Any final questions or thoughts before we let you all go to enjoy the rest of your Friday and your weekend?
Anything at all? And please, like I said, please email me. Please, Greg at codeplatoon.org. I just realized that sometimes these end up on YouTube and typing it in the chat is probably not sufficient. So GREG at codeplatoon.org. Email me. Or email the info line at Code Platoon, and guess what? Comes to me too. So you can do info at Code Platoon or Greg at Code Platoon, and I'll answer it either way.
All right. Seems like we are all good. Thank you for joining us, everyone. And yeah, as we've said numerous times, any additional questions, email Greg at codeplatoon.org. Yeah, so enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody, and have a great weekend.